Hello, I am not malicious. Welcome back to my channel. This time around we have a 4-part mini-series which is titled Which New MMORPG to Main at the End of 2021. We're talking about some of the most promising and interesting MMORPGs coming out towards the end of the year. There's 4 of them in total, so I've decided to split them into a video each, briefly outlining what's in the games, the strong suits, the downsides, short bursts of information as well. Today's topic is Lost Ark. If you're interested in seeing the remaining videos on games like New World, Elion, Swords of Legends Online also, feel free to hit that subscription button and I'll be working on those next. But without much further ado, let us get into the video itself. Let's talk about what Lost Ark is as a game. Lost Ark is an isometric camera angle Korean MMORPG developed by Smilegate. The game does have a lot of Korean elements and style choices and may resemble an ARPG at times, but it remains an MMORPG. Now that is an important distinction to know, since I know many people from Path of Exile have been looking at the game as well. The game has a placeholder release date of the 31st of December 2021, but it will likely release before that, somewhere in Q4 of this year. The game is being published in the West by Amazon Game Studios. Lost Ark is interesting as it's the most popular Korean MMORPG today and remains so. Since its original release in 2018 or so, the game has been big in Korea, if that tells you anything about the core mechanics of the game and how good it is. Now, it was never a game that was released without problems. It always had problems at the start, and those problems were formed and changed by the developer team to become the Lost Ark that we know and love today, that is highly acclaimed in Korea and highly anticipated in the West. Now, when we talk about the monetization options of Lost Ark, first thing we should say is that the game is free to play, but there are other options for payment. Lost Ark isn't completely pay to win. It can be perceived that way based on your opinion. However, you're not required to do that, and since PvP is equalized among a few other things, there's definitely going to be things that paying makes easier, but it won't be a huge deal. You can somewhat speed your gear progression for PvE though, but it's not exactly a huge pay-to-win fiesta in my opinion. It's not like many other MMORPGs I've seen and played in the past, at least to that degree. Let's be honest though, it's 2021, there's always an element of pay-to-win in every Korean MMORPG. Even World of Warcraft has pay-to-win elements if you consider them in that way in buying and selling World of Warcraft tokens. Pay-to-win has always been a sliding scale that people agree or disagree on. It's not something that we're getting away from. So take it with a grain of salt and make up your own conclusions in that sense. In my eyes, however, it's relatively fair. I don't see a massive advantage creeping from being able to just throw an insane amount of money into the game. There are premium monthly membership options that seem rather fair as well. It gives a lot of options for the side aspects of the game or faster travel in certain areas, ability to enhance reputation with some NPCs and more. The biggest thing about paying extra to buy a Founders Pack is the Lost Ark 3-day head start. Probably that's the biggest thing. Most of the premium options are basically cheaper or faster travel, literal quality of life changes, crafting time, cooldown on certain abilities like the escaping function, and a few other things. I have to take a moment here to recommend Saiwoo's video on the NAEU membership and founder pack. Great content creator with a high knowledge of Lost Ark itself. Check that video out if you want a full in-depth breakdown of what is involved there. Saiwoo does a great job of breaking that down and making it very easy to digest and understand, and comparing it to his own Korean knowledge that he knows of the game as well. Now, when it comes to PvE content, the game has plenty of content. Dungeons, raids, world bosses, ocean content, adventuring activities, collectibles also, and a lot of other general MMORPG fun, not just killing bosses or mobs, etc. There's plenty of rewarding factors and mini-systems, rapport, crafting, and it is a very alt-friendly game. Classes are very unique and different from one another in Lost Ark. 21 unique classes currently and counting, all of which are amazingly different. They all have unique styles and are absolutely fun to play. It was difficult to pick a class that I liked best when I played originally as well. Further on that point, the game lets you change your skills, putting them on your bar, enhancing some of them, choosing the perfect combination, as well as certain stats within the game, whether you want a more crit-based playstyle, the build, the customization, and the style of play is also deep in each separate unique class, and the game allows you to customize yourself however you wish there. So there is a great level of depth when it comes to that. Lost Ark has some of the best raids also that I've seen in MMORPGs in a while. Specifically, there's so many videos you can find on YouTube alone of the raids and the dungeon mechanics. It's not exactly a game that adheres to the Holy Trinity as much as one would expect. Most classes fall into either a support or a DPS category, but there is a tanky style of play available within the game as well. The current endgame does factor a lot of dailies in general, and doing content that matters to you, and since most of the important things in Lost Ark come down to gold, I won't go too deep on this one, but a lot of people found the endgame of Lost Ark to be somewhat boring after knocking out a lot of what was truly required. That being said, the developers do work on this game, and they do work hard, and they have since changed many of the more boring, monotonous things into more flavorful content in Season 2, which is a huge thing since that's the style of the game that we are going to get. So be careful what you see or read about Lost Ark, especially if it is really old. The weekly content is also praised highly as well, but there are lockouts for that, at least in Korea at the moment. Also, though the game has a story, it isn't exactly a cinematic masterpiece or anything spectacular. It's decent, but it's not exactly a story-focused MMORPG we're talking about here. Now, when we get to the topic of PvP, PvP is equalized and fast-paced. There are 3v3s, 1v1 arenas, large scale, and more, including guild versus guild. There's no real open world PvP that is worth mentioning technically at the moment. Lost Ark has solidified itself in other regions as a game with very, very fun PvP systems, so much so that there are actual streamers and LAN tournaments where players would fight against each other in front of large crowds, and that seems to be a cool thing that we are seeing more and more of. We've seen this before in other games that have flopped, however, like Blade and Soul, and a few others, but it is worth mentioning. Though PvP is equalized and there isn't much of a gain in the way of gear, there is still plenty to gain when it comes to cosmetics, materials, ranks, bragging rights of course. It's 100% worth mentioning that guild versus guild PvP aspect of the game, however, is not equalized and will use the gear you have on your character. Also, some of the larger PvP fights, for example the 16 versus 16 fights on certain islands on the Russian server, at least to my knowledge, are also not equalized. However, we're not sure what will and won't be equalized for us on the Western release just yet. Now, when it comes to the downsides of Lost Ark, there are a few things that have to be mentioned. IP block being a big controversy currently that is still going on, since so many countries are IP blocked from being able to play the Western version of Lost Ark, which of course creates problems. It is yet unknown whether things are set in stone or will be resolved soon in the future. If I can update you guys about that, I will. I definitely will, even if it's just in a short Twitter post. Let me know if you don't know, or if you're tempted to play Lost Ark but you don't know what countries are IP blocked. I'll be able to release a list of that also if you haven't looked it up yourself. Another issue is the gender locking. Now, gender locking in Lost Ark is not set in stone. We've seen some classes that were primarily male get female gender options unlocked and vice versa. I doubt all the classes available to us will be completely gender unlocked by the time we get them in the future, but I assume that it is likely to see fully gender unlocked classes, at least for most classes, not too far into the future from now. So when it comes to conclusions on Lost Ark and how good of a game it will be in 2021 out of the other games to play, I think the options for Lost Ark are very, very good. I think the game will do spectacularly well in the West. We've seen just how well it's doing in Korea, which is huge and should not be understated. We've seen many things from the developers also, including opening up the game to not be as gender locked. We've seen fluid and interesting new ideas for raids and the seasons, as well as refining content making things more enjoyable and less monotonous. It's 100% a game that keeps evolving for the better as time goes on, and not a stagnant game that was just dropped and left to its own devices. It's very clear the game is being westernized a lot more for our release as well, rather than a copy-paste or drag and drop onto another region. The game went from Korea, Russia, Japan, and has done well in those regions, and finally we get it on the Western hemisphere of the world. It's still a bummer that the IP block is stopping so many people from playing the game, as well as a few other things. We talked about how pay to win could affect the game, but again, that's based on your perception of what is considered pay to win. The large scale PvP, for example, could be more westernized or equalized. If you go on Reddit or on YouTube, or anywhere for that matter, you will find some people voicing their opinions on what should and shouldn't be equalized and such. But I'll say it one more time loudly for anybody that wants to know about my opinion when it comes to Lost Ark. I do not think the game is pay to win. If you think pay to progress is pay to win, then it does count for you, but companies need to make their money somehow, especially if the game is free to play. There will still likely be pay to progress items. There is still a possibility that the view of the Western MMO populace when it comes to considering the game could be more pay to win than what they want, or other small things like camera angles, or expecting the game to be something it isn't could affect the game negatively when it fully releases. However, I don't personally think those opinions will hold too strongly or for too long. There hasn't been a release of an MMORPG in the West in a long time that has satisfied everybody entirely. In fact, there's never been a release that wasn't called a horrible game and the best game ever simultaneously. Lost Ark, regardless, will likely impact the West in a more positive than negative way. I hope this video does not age like milk, honestly, otherwise that's going to be embarrassing for me. But if I'm being truthful, I think many players will find the game and its amount of content engaging and interesting. It's going to be a game that has to compete a little bit with some of the other MMORPGs coming out at the end of 2021, but in my opinion, it's probably one of the biggest contenders we've gotten in the West in a long time, though we've had some new releases and some new releases yet to come. Elion, for example, does not contend with Lost Ark in Korea at all, but of course that may change in the West. If you're thinking of playing Lost Ark, even if you just want to dabble in the free-to-play portion of the game, it is an alt-friendly, isometric view, Korean-style MMORPG that honestly I think you'll find plenty of enjoyment in. If I have to give this game a rating on how strongly of an impact it would have on the Western MMO market, I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10, maybe a 9 once I've played the Western version more and gotten into more of the other stuff that I wasn't really able to get into on other regions. And with that said, we've come to the end of the video. Small announcement wise, I've hit 100 followers on Twitch and over 150 subs on YouTube. I just want to say thank you for that, so much for the support in general. I'm going to be doing a triple giveaway as soon as my Twitter reaches 100 followers also. No limit giveaway there. There will be 3 winners. The games I'll be giving away are undecided as of yet, but nothing small, and I'm happy to hear what you guys would want to win. Suggestion wise, feel free to leave that here, Twitter, Discord, anywhere. If you're interested, just give me a follow on Twitter, check me out on Twitch. Streaming a lot more these days when I can actually find a game that I want to play to stream. And yeah, at 150 Twitch followers, I will turn my cam on, followed by a horror game celebration where I play games I've never wanted to play in my life. So I'll be being myself live on Twitch. And please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, they do help me out tremendously, and hit the notification bell to never miss a video. I do indeed have a Discord as well for those of you that want to join and build a community or just talk and hang out. And yeah, another small part of my announcement is that I will be branching out my content as well. I've made a lot of MMORPG videos and that will continue to happen, but I want to gauge interest in other content like horror, other games, all kinds of gaming in general. Just some other types of videos, commentaries, playthroughs, etc. Since we all know that MMORPGs can have a drought, and sometimes you play something else, sometimes you want to look for something else. I want to hear it from you guys though. Do you mind if it's all on the same channel, or do you prefer it to be on a different channel, or any thoughts on that? What you'd like to see are welcomed. But as always, I've been Malicious, and this has been a pleasure.